What is the biggest misconception people have about divorce?
I would say that a lot of people, especially for new client consults, come in thinking that it's going to be an all-out war, where most of my cases resolve very peacefully. We go to mediation. I typically keep people in separate rooms, but we typically get the case resolved at mediation. Very few initial divorces go to a full-blown trial.
What is the main reason people get divorced?
I would say probably a communication breakdown, and of course that can lead to infidelity, or people just are living separate lives. I've had many cases where it's financial, that one person's doing all of the work and the other person isn't. But I think more than anything, a communication breakdown.
What is the red flags to pay attention to when you date someone and thinking of marriage? From your perspective.
I would say that if there's something about a person you're dating that you ethically are not on the same page with, you're pretty much set up for disaster. That there's a lot of things that you can work together through, but if one person's super motivated and wanting to be a good provider and the other person is the complete opposite, it's very unlikely that's going to last long.
You have to have a similar core.
Yes.
Beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Foundation.
The foundation has to be, you have to be on the same wavelength with a lot of the ethical and moral type issues.
And what do you think are do's and don'ts in marriage if you wanted to last?
Do's and don'ts in marriage. Do be respectful and try to listen to what your partner is saying. You may not agree with it, but you can have a calm conversation about it. I think a lot of people, and I'm going to probably stereotype to say women, have a tendency to keep their opinions to themselves because they don't want to rock the boat, and then they get to the point where they just can't take it anymore. And then it kind of catches the husband off guard because, 3 years have gone by and she's holding it in, and now, for whatever reason, the whole thing starts to break down and it catches him off guard.
What is the longest divorce case you had from the time it was filed to time it was final?
Probably a year and a half, and that is on the longer side because the husband was not turning in the paperwork he needed to, so we had multiple hearings, multiple contempt hearings. That's highly unusual. For the most part, a typical divorce, even with most of the issues in a divorce, you're going to be done within 6 to 8 months.
Okay. How do you balance the emotional aspect of family law cases with the need to provide sound legal advice to your clients?
I'm very transparent with my clients as to what the expectations should be. I relay to them what the statute clearly says, what things they can expect in their case. At the same time, I'm trying to be very empathetic with knowing what they might be fearful for or trying to come up with some alternatives. But I am very much a straight shooter. I will not tell them you're going to get 100% time sharing with your child when I know that's not the reality for the situation that they have. We can always strive to get more of what they're asking for, but I don't want them going into their divorce with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you. Can you discuss a particularly challenging case where you had to think outside of the box to find a solution that worked for your client?
Yes, a lot of clients I deal with own businesses. And I've had cases in the past where something went sideways with the business and we needed to figure out what it was that my client was looking for so that we could still come as close to possible with what their goal was without disrupting too much what was going on with the business.
What advice do you have for parents who are struggling to co-parent efficiently after a divorce or separation?
I would say the most important thing is restraint. That even though the parents don't get along, they need to have a very united front with the children and make sure that they don't speak ill of their ex-spouse, because the children don't deserve to have their parents at each other, at odds with each other, and calling names or saying terrible things about the parent to the child, because all that does is diminish the child's self-esteem.
And I had an episode on that when I said that your child is half of who you are and half who your ex-spouse is. And by talking ill about your ex, you're basically telling your child half of who you are is cheap, half of who you are is bad, I hate half of who you are.
Yep.
And it's not fair to children, like you said.
It's not. And it's definitely difficult to restrain yourself, because sometimes you just want to speak the truth, but children don't need to need to hear any of that.
Be in the middle of it. What is the most memorable courtroom moment you have experienced while representing a client in the family law case?
I had a 3-day trial for a divorce case. I came in towards the tail end of the entire case, probably about 2 months before the trial, and I represented the ex-wife. I would say half of the cases I represent the husband, half the cases I represent the wife, but for this case I represented the wife, and they had hired a financial expert, pretty much to say that my client didn't need alimony. Her husband at the time made like $400,000 a year, she made $12 an hour. So opposing counsel called an accountant, a CPA, on the stand with a financial report that this company had put together, and I tore that report to pieces, to the point that the CPA had an asthma attack on the stand and had to have a minute to use her inhaler. I felt terrible about that and asked her if she needed, a break, and she didn't. But when we got the final judgment from the judge pretty much acknowledged that I had found so many holes in that report that she wasn't taking that report into any context with her ruling, and my client was awarded multiple $1,000s a month for alimony.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. What is the most memorable courtroom moment you have experienced while representing?
The most memorable courtroom moment.
Is this going to be the one you just described?
That was a big one. I was very proud of myself that I could go up against a CPA and be able to financially tear that report apart, to the point that it wasn't even acknowledged in the ruling. But I wouldn't say that I have one specific event that I think is the most memorable, but my goal is always to get as much as I can for my client if we end up having to get to a trial. And I just had 2 trials in the last month that were super successful. And, actually, I do think of it now. I had a client years ago that had a permanent injunction that was placed against him. He had a different lawyer at the time. He went through his divorce, and he was trying to get the permanent injunction dissolved. He lived in New York. His ex lived in Florida. He hired me to try to get the injunction dissolved, and I was pretty much able to show to the new judge that the initial injunction never should have even been granted. There was no domestic violence. There was no threats of harm. And this injunction was completely dissolved by the new judge, and my client, who had been in law enforcement in the military, left there like almost in tears, pretty much thanking me, because he was unable to pursue his career because he couldn't have a gun when he had a permanent injunction against him. So now he was able to go back to the type of work he was able to do beforehand.
Oh, thank you. Can you share a heartwarming or uplifting story from your experience as a family law attorney? I'm sure you have many.
I do, and I will say probably one of my very first cases, a woman hired me. She came into my office and was very quiet. She didn't really pay much attention about taking care of herself. Mousy is the best adjective I can think of. Very nice woman, but you could tell she had been emotionally abused. And as we worked on her case, when she showed up for mediation, she had lost maybe 20 pounds. She had put a little bit of makeup on. She was dressed nice. I literally was taken back about how her physical appearance had drastically changed. And she went from a very quiet, timid person to somebody with a lot of self-confidence in just a short number of months. And I remember thinking to myself that, she changed so much because she was now
represented by you.
Yeah, well, not even that. It was just that she now had the confidence that she could have a new life, and she wasn't afraid anymore.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. Have you ever had to deal with a particularly difficult opposing counselor? How did you handle the situation?
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, the stereotype is accurate sometimes, and there's some attorneys that are difficult to get along with. I have a different approach rather than, and I guess I learned this from dealing with my ex-husband, that when you have a confrontational person on one side, if you get defensive and confrontational, all it does is ignite the whole situation. So I kill them with kindness. And in the end, I've had multiple attorneys that in the beginning who were nasty or, degrading, ended up apologizing and to me at the end, and, walking away with a much better relationship with that person. I kill them with kindness.
Wow. So let's lead to the next question. In your opinion, what is the biggest misconceptions people have about the role of family law attorney?
I think a lot of people think that if they hire a super aggressive, loud, obnoxious lawyer, they're going to end up with a better result. I think that is absolutely not the truth. I think that judges appreciate attorneys that are sensible, that can keep that's a little time out. I'm trying to think of what the word is. I think judges appreciate attorneys that are reasonable and try to come in with some stipulations as to things that are agreed upon, and you can be firm and aggressive in a respectful way, and I think that goes a lot farther in the courtroom than being a loud, obnoxious type person.
So if you come to the attorney and they said, I will fight for you, and kind of aggressive way, so it's not necessarily a good thing.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think a lot of times too, when a lawyer's super aggressive, the witness that they are interviewing ends up kind of shutting down. I found that the friendlier I am, people have a tendency to talk more, and I've had many times, especially in depositions, where the opposing party just reveals a whole bunch of information I wasn't even expecting for them to reveal because they didn't feel threatened.
Thank you. Have you ever had a case where social media played a significant role in an outcome? How did you approach it?
In today's world with social media, people post things all the time on their social media, and it opens it up for other people to take snapshots of, to use against them in certain ways. I just tell clients, especially when they're going through a divorce, keep your life private. Don't post a whole lot because it can come back and bite you later.
Did you ever fire a client?
I have a handful of times. The only times that I've actually, and you can't fire a client, but what you can do is file a motion to withdraw from a case.
Yeah.
I've done that a couple times, and it's mostly in a case where the client wasn't being truthful with me. Why, I don't know, because everything they say to me is confidential, but I've come across a couple times where I've caught them in a lie, and I am not going to go in front of a judge with a person that's not going to be honest.
Oh, thank you. Can you share any tips or strategies for maintaining a healthy work-life balance as a family law attorney?
Yes. Set your hours and try to keep your hours. I could work 14 hours a day if I wanted to, because there's always something to do. I try to keep my hours more of a 9 to 5. Obviously, there's emergencies once in a while that during the evenings or weekends I have to do some work. But I know that if I can't walk away and have my life outside of my law practice, that I'm not going to be as good of a lawyer to my clients.
Can you turn the switch off? So when you're done with work, are you done with work in your head, or are you still...
I'm still always, thinking about something that needs to be done in a case, and once in a while I'll send an email to myself or take a note of something I think of when I'm getting ready for work or at the grocery store, something random like that. But for the most part, I can. I do check my email probably a little bit too much, but I'm always, checking to make sure there's no emergencies going on.
How do you stay up to date with the changes in family law?
A lot of reading with new cases that come out. There's conferences once a year for family lawyers that have all the updated case law and statutes. So it's just reading and keeping fresh with the new cases.
What motivates you to continue practicing family law?
You talk to most lawyers, and they don't want to touch family law with a 10-foot pole. It definitely has a lot of drama sometimes, but to me, every day is different. So I am never bored, and I do feel like what I do is helping people in their new stage for their life.
You make a difference in people's life.
Yes.
That's my satisfying.
It's, I will say my ex-husband used to tell my children that I broke up families for a living. And when they told me that, I was shocked, but a family is already broken by the time they come to see me, and I just try to put some resemblance of a family back together. It's just in a different circumstance.
Well, if you can share one piece of advice with people related to your profession, what would that be?
Be honest, be prepared, be as organized as possible, and just do what's right. And when you do what's right, everything seems to fall into place. My law partner and I don't really advertise our law firm at all. It's mostly word of mouth and other lawyers that don't practice family law, and I have never really, knock on wood, had any issues with having enough clients. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.